From Google Earth to the skies above. From hiking right through them to a big map that shows them right here that my wife found at Goodwill. The Yakima fold belts are one of the kind of keystones, if you will, in this whole Olympic-Wallowa Linement, or OWL, story. And it's due to the whole being fairly obvious. We find the belt from the border of Washington and Oregon, up through the Tri-Cities, Yakima, up to Ellensburg, and along the Columbia River. And these are mountains and ridges you may have climbed before. Saddle Mountain, Frenchman Hills, the Horse Heaven Hills, this whole mess going on in Yakima. We've had exotic terrain smack us upside the head. We've had a hot spot burn a hole in the crust. We've had molten rock from the Rockies to the Pacific and everywhere in between. A couple folds can't be that big of a deal, right? It is when you put a nuclear enrichment facility right next to it. By the way, you can totally go take a tour of the reactors at Hanford. So cool. There's so many things in this story, we have to go back to our friend, the Olympics, the crescent basalts, or Silencia. Remember in the first part of this whole series where we described that the Olympics are being slowly shoved up into Washington, and they have been doing that for the last 50-ish million years. This is still technically happening. Forces down in Southwest America are pushing the west coast, if you will, out. And at the same time, the Pacific plate is being shoved upwards. And guess who's at the very edge of that? Us. Kicking a carpet isn't exactly a one-to-one ratio when comparing how our ground works. It is a good stand-in for what we're going to do. Silencia is my foot, and the rug is Washington's backside.
Stop kicking my rug.
Eat. The direction of this shoving, if you will, is creating a sort of clockwise rotation here in the Pacific Northwest. This happens roughly at about 1 degree every million years. It doesn't necessarily sound like a lot, but consider, if you will, that the Columbia River flood basalts erupted from 17 million to 6 million years ago, and now some of those flows can be found almost 3,000 feet up. Trust me when I say, ask me how I know. We didn't even get to talk about the petrified wood of eastern Washington. Washington gets sweet-chinned music. It causes the entire area to rotate in a clockwise formation. How does that give us these weird ridges? And again, why is that a big deal? Well, the U.S. Department of Energy found it curious enough to do surveys regarding potential for earthquakes near Hanford. And while there seem to be just regular old ridges, there's another part to this story besides just the fold belt. The Yakima Fold Thrust Belt. Aha! They're made of earthquake faults, and if you're not seeing a trend at this point in time, yeah. But these systems act as both a combination of thrust faults, where one block is moving up and over the top, and strike-slip faults, where one block is moving past the other. But you don't just get a 3,000-foot mountain just on one thrust fault alone. These ridges are knuckling over the top of themselves, and as they do this, they stack up faults. This has the curious name known as an imbricate fan, which, don't worry, I won't test you on it. However, we see here that these faults progressively stack up on top of each other, thus resulting in a larger ridge. Okay, but ow. It's curious to note that when we look at the direction of all of these ridges, they follow the direction that OWL is headed to the southeast. Recall in the last video, right at the end, where I said that OWL had to be older than the Columbia River flood basalts because the Columbia River basalts kind of mesh over the top of us and show us the shape of things. And remember what's down below all of that basaltic rock? Those really hard to move exotic terrains that are metamorphic rock from hundreds of millions of years ago. So it's pretty suspicious that all of these folds are occurring roughly in the area where the margin of these exotic terrains would be. But what's a couple ridges to this story? Our next video, I'm gonna do something a little bit different. In our next video, we're talking the Wallowa Gap as well as the Missoula floods. If I said it wrong, I'm sorry.